There's a lot I want to talk to you about. People may not know who you are. I mean, I know you from the WGA Writers Guild of America East. So can you just like talk about what you're doing? I know you're a producer, I know you're a writer, you're super busy, even though you're retired, and you have a long career.
I don't
So,
use that word. I'm not retired.
okay, good, good. Okay, you're not retired.
No. I mean, I live in Vero Beach, Florida now, but I don't consider myself retired because I work all the time because I
Okay,
enjoy it.
that's good. So then so how would you talk about yourself? Like how would you sum it up for people who may not know everything about you?
Okay, well, basically, I had a different life in England, and I was a pop singer in the 60s. So I recorded on the Parlophone label, same as the Beatles. I was only 16 years of age when it happened. I stayed in show business for 3.5 years, and then I became a blackjack dealer. And through
Wow.
that, I was working through the Mecca company that I worked for. They had the very first concession of a casino on board a cruise ship, and that cruise ship was the QE2. And I met some Americans, and they said America would suit my personality, and they sponsored me into this country in 1972. And
Wow.
at that point, I realized I dropped out of school to become a pop singer, but I had a brain. And so by being in America, I was given the opportunity to go back to college. And, I paid for it myself, but there was a lot of help back in those days to get a degree. And so my second love had always been, well, my first love had always been reading and writing before I became a pop singer. So I naturally, my favorite author was Dickens. He was a journalist of his times. And so I majored in journalism. And I was a little older because by the time I graduated, I was about 30. And I did an internship with WCBS because I realized the younger students were not reading newspapers anymore. They were getting everything from the boob tube. And then I went with WCBS and they had a unit called Eye on New York. And it was through Eye on New York that I became hooked on documentaries. They used
I
to do,
love documentaries. I mean, I've
yeah.
watched so many, I forgot. Like now I'm starting to post to Twitter stuff I'm looking at, but yeah, I love them.
So that actually lasted. I graduated. They did employ me because I was doing an internship. They employed me because I'm a really good worker and willing to work all hours of the day or night for them. And they actually closed down the unit because of 60 Minutes,
Hmm.
because they thought Americans now could only take 20 minutes of attention span. And so documentaries were out. And I thought, well, I just graduated. I've just fell in love with something. So I ended up going out to California to try and work for independents out there doing documentaries like Carl Sagan. And they couldn't get funding. So I ended up actually being a script supervisor on a show called Fantasy with Peter Marshall and Leslie Uggams. That was in 1983. I thought, why did I major in journalism to work on this silly afternoon show for people who, and nobody was watching us anyway because it was opposite General Hospital with Luke and Laura. But
Huh.
I decided then to become a corporate producer for AST Research, which helped me because I had been a selectric typewriter writer and I had to use a computer because they were a computer company. So all that built up. I still had my degree. And then I realized I'm going to have to give up this nice corporate job because I want to get back into TV. And that is New York. So I traveled back to New York. And that's how I got into the WGA. I got a job at ABC News One as a writer. And as soon as I started there, they went on the 1987 strike against
Oh, well.
CBS and ABC. So I walked the picket line, and I stayed there for a good 3 years. And then my friend who had been at WCBS had gone over to NJN Public Television, and she was forming a documentary unit. And What I was doing was kind of a desk job. It was you bring in the feeds from around the world, cut them with an editor, and then write a little blurb and send it out to the affiliates who didn't have that wherewithal to tell the news of the world. So I thought, well, this would be more interesting doing documentaries and creating again. So I left ABC and I went to NJM Public Television, and I've been there. Then I started with them in 1988. I was laid off in 91 because of the Florio cuts of management. But I was always employed. So I actually became a self-employed producer at that point, but always worked. I had an office at NJN, a telephone, I was on the telephone list. It was like I still was employed by them, but I was actually self-employed. And
That's a
that got
lot. And
me into, I was
you,
going to say that got me into forming my own Eagle Vision production company. That was in 1997 because I thought if I'm going to be self-employed, I want to do it the PBS way, raise the funds first, and then make the documentaries. So that's what I've been doing.
well, no, I was gonna say, yeah, apologies for saying you're retired. I guess I meant like you were retired officially from media, but you're not really retired. But
Oh
okay,
no.
so you've obviously done a lot, and it's very clear you're a hard worker. And you said, you always got work. I mean, how do you think that happened? Because some people they do a lot, but they still can't get some work or
Well,
da da
I
da.
mean, all the documentaries I produced, I quite a few documentaries. I mean, in the 2.5 decades I worked for them, I've had Emmy nominations from the Philadelphia market. Um, always been a bridesmaid, never a bride. Still waiting for that one. Um, and yes, I did everything. You know, I raised the money. Um, and that was one of the important things because what eventually happened, I did go back to work for NJN, but for the foundation to raise money, I became a development director for all the producers at that point. So I worked for them for about 5 years until we shut down. So I was good at fundraising. They realized that right away because I wanted to go to Japan and be in a state agency. You couldn't travel outside. So I had to get Japan Airways to give me the flight. and and the people that we were shooting, it was a a group of people going to seniors going to see how seniors were treated in Japan. And I also did a 5-part news series for them on life in Japan. And so I think it's because I could do everything. I edited my own documentaries. I used to be a linear editor, very fast, and then Avid came along, and I thought, oh my God, I tried to learn again. And a very good friend of mine at NJN, who was my post-production editor, said, "You can do it, Jill." And he showed me, and then I fell in love with Avid because it was like film. You could just dump things in without losing generation. So I became an Avid editor of my documentaries. And yeah, so I was a one-man band, and I still am a one-man band, basically. Although, you need graphics designers and other people to make you look good.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you, you mentioned funding and you did a lot of fundraising. I mean, how do you raise funds for a documentary?
Well, one of the tools that I had at NJN and I still have for Eagle Vision is the foundation directory. So I belong to that. And as a non-profit, actually, I get it free of charge, which is actually 2,400 or more these days to have an annual subscription to them. But for some reason, they give it to me free so long as I just let them know that I'm still in business, So, and then you look at your idea and what you want to raise money for and you obviously write a synopsis about what you vision for the program. Once you've got that, then you do your research on Foundation Directory and find out which corporate foundations, family foundations are able to their area of interest. That's what you have to look for is area of interest. You match that up, and then in the old days, it was a lot easier because you could actually kind of get in touch with the gatekeepers and make friends with the gatekeepers. And these days, it's very much more transparent because everything isn't online. And I've learned how to do that. Again, it's always being willing to learn. Otherwise, you're left in the backwaters. So, yes, I had to learn how to do online proposals, which didn't give you enough room to be as conversational to people as you could in the past. You had to just be very precise as to what you wanted, what you're asking for. But because of my work at NJN for 2.5 decades, I did make a lot of connections with the family foundations and the corporate foundations in New Jersey. So when I came up with this idea pre-COVID, it was about 2019, and I was going to raise money just for the R&D portion of the documentary, so I could do the research on it and write a more in-depth proposal. COVID came along, so I kind of shelved the idea, and just to pass the time, aside from picking up screenplay writing, which I knocked out 3 screenplays during COVID to keep myself busy. I also went on to Kickstarter, followed their directions, and created a Kickstarter page. And then the the person, my compadre from WCBS days, we've been a team. So she's actually just moved down to Florida. And she's my producer, always has been, always will be, as well as I'm the executive producer of this as well. And one of our funders, who is a platinum funder, we're naming him an executive producer. But I said to her, there is no point launching a Kickstarter campaign unless we know we're going to reach the goal. And so I almost shelved it. I thought this won't work. And then I got in touch with one of the people I knew from NJN, who is a staunch American Revolution, which is the subject of this documentary, American Revolution aficionados. He had, because we were in Trenton, he had actually funded a couple of documentaries on the American Revolution when I was there. And I just sent him the proposal and told him I was doing and he just gave me a nice little check at the end of 2023, which stimulated me to say, okay, we can reduce the goal now that we have this outside of the Kickstarter. We can reduce the Kickstarter goal a little bit. And then I said to Janice, you've been with this organization that has a lot of American Revolution aficionados. Do you have a mailing list?
Mm.
And she was no longer with them, but she did have the mailing list. So I just sent out 500 emails, and what ones that bounced back I knew didn't have that email anymore. So I had a nice list, and we just kept sending out and calling and sending out and calling, and we made the Kickstarter. We made it, and some of my friends said, "Oh, I don't want to go on Kickstarter." Sometimes there is a problem with people trying to put their credit card in, so they would just send me checks. So we could keep lowering every time we got a check outside of it. We lowered the goal, and but we raised 16,250, and we paid their fee, and so that got us kick-started.
Well,
And and then I went to, and did all, I had the money to go up north from Florida and visit. You have to book for your research. You have to book like the libraries, like the David Library, the Mount Vernon Library. They're very strict about that. The National Archives. I mean, it's easy to get a researcher's, but you have to fill out forms and say when you're coming in. Same with the Library of Congress and the New York Public Library. So you get all that and you put your schedule together. That is very important to know when you're on a travel research, that you know what you're doing every day, who you're meeting. So we also got in touch with all of the historic sites that have reenactments. So this was in May of 24, because the reenactments, because of the retreat across the Jerseys was always in the winter time. Can't do it this winter because we're in post-production, so I had to do it that winter. So once I did the research, we knew we had to raise money. I put a proposal into the New Jersey Historical Commission, and amazingly enough, we didn't get it. So then we had to run around to our friends, and amazingly, they said, "Yeah, we can get the money for you to do the shoots." So I think it's partly not being afraid to ask and not being afraid of rejection. It's part of the game, sort of thing. So I suppose if you have a good selling ability, you kind of sell yourself, sell your passion, and I mean, the person who kick-started me at the very, very beginning is the one that became a platinum sponsor for me. I
But
mean,
also does personality also help in getting money?
oh yeah, as I say, I think you have to be outgoing. You have to know how to network, work a room when I'm at it, like work the room, work people. I was at the WGA members meeting, and I went around the room and just told them what I was doing, and everything else like that. Yeah, it does. I understand why some people, especially writers, a lot of writers are more reclusive. And so that must be very scary for them. Because I've been on stage, I really think, having been a pop singer and going on stage and singing pop songs to people at cabaret clubs and stuff, probably helped get me out of my shell at a very young age. So yeah, I think you have to work on your skills and not be not be afraid. I never used to like writing. I like research, but I never liked writing. And I always made the deadline, but it was fear that drove me. And I could always write because I had all of it in my head. I could do it overnight and then find out everybody loved what I wrote. And I could never understand that. But then all of a sudden, I broke free of that. I think that is just practice, practice, practice. And all of a sudden, one day I thought, oh, I had no fear. There was no fear there. It was just joy. And then you get the writing, you always get that high at the end when you finish something. I mean, it's a great feeling.
Why didn't you like writing?
Um, well, it's a kind of a personal story, which I don't mind sharing. Because I was in nightclubs, I was at 16. I thought I knew it all and I was a party girl, let's put it that way, but really bad. And didn't recognize it because I never had any consequences until I was 33, which is why I I got through college when I was still being a party girl. I don't know how I managed that, but I did it magna cum laude. I am a crazy woman. But kind of what happened. Sorry, what was the question again? I've lost train of
Why
thought.
why didn't you like writing?
Okay, what happened was I always did my writing with a martini. And when I and I in I'm 44 years sober, and I went to AA and worked the steps and stay there. I still have a home group and everything. But I got very afraid that I couldn't write without a martini. And it took me 7 years to get over that hump, but I always made the deadline. So, it was painful, but I always got it. And then it was like a whole world, like this narrow path became a 6-lane highway. And I really love writing now. It's my favorite pastime.
Okay, now why do you love it?
Why do I love it? I just love creating. I just like, and I think I'm the type of person that has to stay busy all the time. I know I'm in Florida and I have a lovely clubhouse with a swimming pool and the snowbirds come down, but I really don't want to sit in the pool on noodles chatting about your aches and pains. I don't have a lot in common because I've been a career woman all my life and single all my life. Never got married. I mean, I had partners, but So it was like I wondered why I'd even moved down here, but I got this great deal on a great condo when NJN closed down, and I figured at 65 at that time, the networks weren't going to employ me. They had too many young college kids eager to be in TV for next to nothing. So that's when I decided to come down here and see what I could do down here. But I did for a while. I didn't work at all pre-COVID. I did a lot of volunteer. I volunteered. I have to do things. So I joined the Theatre Guild, and the actor and singer in me came out, and I was in musicals. So I raised funds for them as on a volunteer basis. And then I met someone during my screenwriting during COVID, who is a filmmaker, and he was on the board of the Vero Beach Film Festival. He said, "Oh, we need you over here." So now I raise money for them and screen all the documentaries for the selection that they have on Film Freeway, so people can like submit and the documentaries and feature films and shorts and
And so, yeah, so you're talking about your documentary. So you're talking about it has to do with the American Revolution. Can you just
right.
talk about what it actually is, the documentary?
Yes, it started off as I realized that everybody knows about the victories at Trenton and Princeton. And whenever I looked around, nobody really looked at the formative years of the American Revolution, which is, first of all, I was going to just do the New York, New Jersey campaign, but then I wanted to get the story of African Americans into it. And their story actually happened in 1775. And at that point, that's when I changed it from the New York, New Jersey campaign to the formative years. And I'm using a lot of contemporary quotes. So we may even change that working title. It will always be Road to Liberty, but the subtitle may change. We're talking to WNET, and they're good at titles, so I gave them a whole list to say, it can be the formative years, but a couple of people have said to us that's very academic, even though it is educational. So another one that might work very well is Through Their Eyes, because it's a lot of quotes from contemporary writings, especially Washington and the difficulties he had when he first took over commander in chief. So that's the story, and then I begin it in 1765 with the start of the grievances that came up with the tax acts and that escalated and within a decade caused the shot heard around the world. And then we go through the little known stories of how close you were to losing the war, like in the Battle of Brooklyn, and how, for some reason, saying, "No, we won't destroy them. We'll just do a siege of Brooklyn," and they were able to escape because of the sailors from the New England militias that rowed them all to safety. 9,000 men and their equipment, I mean. And then they would have probably had 1,000 captured, but there was a fog, so the British didn't see that they were still rowing over when dawn came. And this was at the end of August, so the night was short. I mean, it was a short night and terrible weather as well. They had a horrible thunderstorm and rain, and but it actually say it helped them because the British Navy ships couldn't get up the East River, so they were able to get away. But eventually, of course, the British won. They landed at Kips Bay and forced them out, and then forced them up to White Plains. And so these are the battles that people hear about, but they just slide over them. And, it was horrible, the Battle of Fort Washington, when Washington left the decision to a 25-year-old Nathaniel Greene to evacuate or not evacuate. And he left 2008. In fact, he put more men in there, and they all got captured or killed. The killing wasn't big in those days. It was more capturing and being put in prison ships. So these are the little known stories that will come out in my documentary.
And I mean, it is sort of ironic that you're from England and you're doing this kind of
Ah,
documentary. So has anybody given you a hard time from the old country?
Not really. I mean, I've been here 52 years. And as I say to people, if I had been here in 1776, knowing the history and the grievances, I would have picked up my musket, I would have. Yeah, I would have been a rebel. And I try to stay as a journalist. I am doing both sides. I'm
Mhm.
showing how difficult it was for loyalists and that it was actually a civil war going on. And people always talk about the Civil War, but there was a civil war before the Civil War. We have always had difficulties in our divided thoughts on what the world should be like.
Well, how do you actually write a documentary to make sure it's objective and so forth?
Well, you interview people first. Historians are like, for this, it's a history one. It depends what the subject matter is. Sometimes it can be real fun, if it's a travelogue. And I worked for NJN doing segment producing, which they said documentarians couldn't do, called Discover New Jersey. And it's not just the New Jersey Turnpike. There's so much in New Jersey, like Cape May and the Highlands. And yeah, I did tons of those. So, there you're kind of interviewing people who have restaurants, people who have, history societies, if there's any history in it. But and you're shooting everything, so you don't have to worry about getting what I'm doing at the moment is getting all the old paintings and getting most of them are in public domain because it is history. But if they're in a collection, you really should be nice enough to contact them to ask them for permission to use in a documentary, even though it's out of copyright. And so, some documentaries are easier than the others, but what you have to do is interview. You find your experts, you find your historians, and then you go out with a camera and them. Then you transcribe the tapes, which in the old days I had to do by hand, but now you can go to transcribe,
Or use
turbo
Premiere,
scribe.
or use Premiere, use the transcribe function in Premiere, in
Well, it's
Adobe
a
Premiere.
turbo scribe I use. It's free of charge.
Okay.
Yeah, you just upload your video and it spits out the
Oh, okay.
words. So, but I spent many hours doing that. Although it always helped me write the script because I knew exactly what sound bites. So then you have to go through and pull the sound bites, like highlight the ones that you like. You won't be able to use them all, but once you have that, and you've already got your proposal, so you have your outline, you have your blueprint, and basically you fill in the blueprint with am I using a history interview or am I using a quote? And what would the narration be that leads you into that? And then the segue out of it. So you're writing in snippets. It's not like a screenplay.
So you don't write the outline before you do how do you start the process? Like, do you write the outline first or do you talk to the people
Yeah,
first
the
or what do you
outlay you
do?
have to for proposals when you're raising money. You've Many people want to see. You can't write the script. I've never written a script before I've done my shooting. But some of these proposal people, because they're suits and they don't understand filmmaking, think that you have a script like a screenplay. No, you don't. But I do have a blue. Would you like to see the blueprint?
That'd be
Which
cool.
is,
Yeah.
I have an 11-page blueprint of this, which shows each area that I will be hitting in chronological order.
So first you have that blueprint
Mhm.
and then you get the funny, but then you go out to do the interviews. But does your direction ever change based on the interviews you were able to get or not, or the information you've come up with?
No, what changed, which changed it from the New York, New Jersey campaign, which really we were just going to do a short intro of Washington taking over at Boston, the siege of Boston, then very short, like a 2-minute intro, and then get down in April 1776, and then the British Armada would come in the end of June, just before the Declaration of Independence. That was originally, and then all of a sudden I said, "Oh, I don't want to go back to tell the African American story." So that changed everything, and because I'm using a lot of quotes, I also have an African American who has some very good sound bites. I thought I've got to change this. So yeah, I changed it and I let Janice know, my executive producer. I said, we're going to have to change the title on this, you know. And so it does change sometimes. And then now that I have we're almost finished laying the track down, which is the narration, the sound bites, and the quotes. We've recorded all of those, so that's going down, and it's always going to be long. It's always going to be long. So now what I do is I have my screenplay, my script here, and a script is slightly different from the screenplay. It's a two column. So you have audio on one side, which are the quotes, the narration, and then you have the direction for images on the other side. And I go through that now, and I'll be cut, cut, cut. This can be cut. That's redundant. This can be cut. This can be cut, and still you retain the essence of the story. So
But
yeah, it takes but it's fun. I mean, I that's what I enjoy. I mean, it could be for some people, it could be, oh God. I remember I had at NJN, I had a researcher who hated being a researcher. He wanted to be a reporter. I said, but you've got to know research. I said, try and think of yourself as Sherlock Holmes. You know?
yeah.
But I love every aspect of filmmaking. So yeah.
But do you lay down the audio track first and
Oh
then do
yes.
the
Mhm.
images? And then you do
You,
the images. Okay.
no, 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 no. No, you have to have everything done
Okay.
because you need the track is the narration, the sound bites from the interviews, and the quotes if you're using quotes from contemporary writings.
Okay. And then you organize the images to go with it. But what you're cutting is it only the images? Is the audio? What are you cutting? What are
At
you
the
taking
very
out,
first, the
removing?
track is just audio.
Right. I mean, what are you
You're not
removing?
doing
You said you
audio and
edit.
video at the same time. The track, you because you want to know what the length is and what you need to cut because uh, PBS and most one-hour documentaries are very strict about how the length, which includes a 1 minute credit roll and includes the funding at the open and close of the documentary. So the maximum I can do is 58 minutes. So if I'm saying 65 minutes, that means I've got to cut 7 minutes.
But are you cutting the audio and the video? Like
No,
when
no,
you cut
no.
these things?
I
Okay.
cut the track first, so the track is the right length.
No, no, I mean, okay, the track is the right length. So
Mhm.
what I mean cutting is you're removing, you're
Yeah.
deleting.
Yeah. What I do is I have an editor for this one because now that I'm not with NJN, I don't have the editing equipment. So one of my NJN editors is editing this for me, and he uploads everything, and then I'll have the time code. So then I'm working on the paper to cut things, and then when I get the track, I'll give him cut here, cut there, in, out, take it out until we get it to the time we want.
Which is
At
a
that
video.
point,
Yeah.
with audio
Okay,
only.
audio. Okay, audio.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
audio
sorry, because I've
only.
never worked on a documentary, so I
Oh,
understand.
okay. Yeah, so you always have to lay down the track audio only at the first.
Okay.
And sometimes you will have video, like with the interviews, that's audio video.
Right.
But like with quotes, because it was just voiceover, that's just voiceover.
Mhm.
With the narration, that's just voiceover. So there's very little video in it except for the interviews. And
I
then
see.
you start layering, and I already have it on the video side. I have so many, so many images to use and maps. And I work with my graphics artists on the maps and everything to show what the battles were. And then you've got to create the facts of a battle, you know, how many people were involved, how many were captured, how many were killed. So we create those in post.
I see. Yeah, because I was thinking that, sometimes okay, I watch so many documentaries. So sometimes I'm watching a documentary and they have the talking head, then they switch to images, and I'm guessing, oh, they probably edited what they said, and it would look weird if they had those cuts visually. So they're going to the images to augment what they're saying.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't like jump cuts. So
Okay.
if you're editing someone's interview
Mhm.
and you're using like one sentence of it and then jumping and putting it, tacking on another part of their interview, then you need to have what we call B-roll to cover that part of it. Plus, it's
Mhm.
more interesting to see visuals than it is to see us talking head. So that we always have enough talking head, at least 6 seconds, in order to show, super them on the lower thirds as to who they are and what their expertise is. So, yeah. And I have to do that for the quotes too, so people know where I got the quotes from, because it is a historical thing. I can't just have them say this and people believe that I haven't done my research.
Yeah, sometimes it's frustrating because I'll watch a documentary and then they'll have an expert and they won't show their title very long. And isn't there a rule that you have to be able
Five
to read it if
seconds,
you?
that's all.
Okay. Now, okay, let's get into your singing because you have touched upon it. Now, what the
Right.
heck were you doing as a pop star? Like, what happened? How did that happen? I know you're
Okay.
young.
Well, basically, it happened because I was about 14 at the time. My brother was into rock music, pop music. Cliff Richard in England was big, even Elvis Presley was big. Um, and he was writing pop songs. And my sister, her name was Christine at the time, she was his muse. So there was no musical instrument in our house. I don't know how this happened, but there was no musical instrument. So Jerry would have Jackie, well, she became Jackie, but I'll explain that in a minute, but had her sing into a tape recorder his lyrics, and he composed the music too. He knew how it would sound, and so she would learn it, sing it into the tape recorder because he wanted to sell it, to a music people. So they did that for a couple of years, and I was probably 15 at the time when my parents allowed me to go to. There wasn't much to do. We had moved from London to Horsham, Sussex, and there wasn't really much to do. And I was left at home alone when they're in their teenage years, going to parties and everything, watching like Dr. Kildare and Ben Casey, and just being bored out of my tree. And so I said to my parents, "Well, why can't I go to a Saturday night party?" And they thought, "Well, her brother and sisters will be there. Of course she can. They'll take care of her." Yeah, right. So we were in the car. We used to meet at the King's Head, and I was already drinking by then. It wasn't the nightclubs that started because pubs were very full in those days, and you just had to sit, and someone older would get you gin and tonic. And so we always met at lunchtime at the King's Head to decide where is the party, where is the record player going to be, who's bringing the wine, who's bringing the keg of beer, and we're going to have a party. And it was kind of what later generations called a rave, I suppose, except that there was only a small amount of us. It wasn't. So we were in a car, traveling in a car, and it was my sister's boyfriend, myself. It was one of those long seats in the front that had three people you could sit, and there were three men in the back, in their 20s, roughly. And I heard one of them say, he just made a pop record and it was a hit. And I chimed up because, as I say, I'm good at networking. And my brother writes songs, and he says, "Oh, does he? Can you sing one?" And I turned to Christine and I said, "No, she sings them." And she says, "Oh, I can't remember the words." And I said, "Well, I can." Because I used to hear them practicing. And so I started singing. She joined in, and he liked the blend of our voices. So Jackie has been irritated me ever since because I changed her from a solo artist into a double act. And so we used to go practice because Dave was a pianist and he had written a music on a toy piano. They'd just come out, the players, and he went da 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 da, and it became a hit round Christmas time. So he knew music people. He knew people in the industry. So he and Jerry teamed up. Jerry became the lyricist. He took Jerry's music and put it on sheet music, and we practiced, and we did a demo disc up on Tin Pan Alley at Denmark Street in London. So we did our demo disc, and they took that to the music folk. So they went to Ardmore and Beechwood, and they liked it. And then, much to my brother's, he was not pleased with this, but the Kim Bennett was the guy who liked the music and the songs and was buying them. Said, "Well, who's singing on the demo disc?" He said, "That's just my sisters." And he said, "They sound good." And he said, and at the time, this was just before the Beatles. It was 63. They were just, it hadn't exploded. And at the time, it was the Shirelles, the Caravels, and here you are, a real sister act. So we got signed actually with Northern Songs. They became our agent, who were eventually the agent before they went to Apple, the agent for the Beatles. And we were on their label at the EMI Parlophone. So we signed a contract. We made the record. We made the record in 63. Unfortunately, it didn't get released until March 1964. And that's when the Beatles had already taken over. And so we were sidelined basically for that. But I was enjoying it. We were on TV to, plug it. We were on the radio shows to plug the record. And I was having the time of my life. And my sister was not having me dragging around with her. But we had an agent. We knew we had to make money. And I was working for the Bank of England. I got out of school by working for the bank, by getting a job at the Bank of England, where my dad was a building surveyor for them. And I caused a ruckus because everybody brought their transistor radios in to listen to me at Jimmy. What was his name? Jimmy. It was called Pop In. I mean, it was a radio show that he did at lunchtime. So, so my principal called me. That's what they called them. Your boss was your principal. Called me into his office and said, "Well, you have to make a decision. You're a very bright lady, and we're planning to make you a computer programmer. So you have to make a choice whether it's this." And so I said, "Well, I better give a month's notice then." Well, of course, Dad, there was ructions in the house, but eventually they gave in and thought they're going to do it anyway. And so we went up to Manchester, which is a completely new world. But in those days, it was really a swinging city. It had cabaret clubs, theatre clubs, working men's clubs. There was a lot going on up there, and it was kind of like if you make it in Manchester, you make it in the big time. So we went up there and lived in, you digs for entertainment digs. And as I say, I was having a great time, but um, we were known as the Rowing Train. I mean, we just didn't get along. It was chalk and cheese. But we lasted for 3.5 years. We should have made another record, but Jackie didn't. She had to change her name to Jackie. I stayed Jill, but they thought, oh, great name, Jackie and Jill. That was our stage name. So she quit afterwards without making the second record, which was in our contract. And that's when I was actually going out with a nightclub owner at the time, and he said, "Well, you can be my blackjack dealer." So I was self-taught on that too. I guess I've self-taught myself on a lot of things. Um, yeah, you just I call it, it's kind of just enjoying where you are in life and making the most of it. I always see the glass half full, and I think that was the difference between me and Jackie. Is that she did retain her name. She did not go back to her old name, her birth name. She that's the one thing she kept was the name Jackie. I mean, we're in contact with one another, but there was a big rift for a long, long period of time. Um, So, but nowadays we are older and wiser, and you shouldn't let what happened as teenagers affect your relationship today. So,
Well,
but it
well, see,
was,
I
sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, what I was saying is we were making more money than like a working man with a family as teenagers, because we'd work these clubs. We had an agent up there, and they would book us into the different venues there. Plus, we did the American troops. That's why I knew I wanted to come to America. We did the American troops in France and Germany. That's how long ago it was. Um, a month in each place. And that's when I was at Stuttgart in an officer's mess and had my first T-bone steak. And that's when I said, "Oh, Americans have it good," because we had Sunday roast very thinly sliced. So I knew from there that I wanted to get to America, that it must be a great place to be. And I think I try to manifest things, and I think I do pretty good at it.
Well, I was gonna say, ask you because I know that you wrote a script about like that's maybe loosely based on your pop singer experiences.
I haven't written it. I've written the synopsis for that. But actually, what I did is I wrote the first script I wrote was called The Bottom Line. It was really about they say, write what you know. It was about the strike of 1987, except I made it a fictional TV station, and the corporations are taking over and they want to make it a business, not a public trust news anymore. And so there was the strike. And I put in some of the experiences that I experienced on the picket line, in there. So that was my first one. I actually wrote that in 2019 and entered it in the Big Apple Film Festival and became a semi-finalist. So I thought, hmm. And I had taken, when I was in California, actually taken some classes in screenwriting. So, and I had all the notes for that from that. Um, and so, yeah, I thought, oh, this is when COVID came along. I thought, oh, I need to do something. I was going to go to Tuscany on a writer's retreat. I'd won a position there with Nori, is it? Um, and of course, it was for the end of March 2020. And we know what happened in Italy, it closed down. So
Mm.
I wasn't able to do that. And then I decided, now that we were all locked in, what can I do? And I got this email about, for some reason, it dropped in my box about Stage 32. And I went on there because they had a workshop going on, a Zoom meeting. And then I found out I could join the writer's room free for a month. And for some reason, just at that time, it was all what I call professional writers, really serious writers. And we had a great writers' room. We had Jason Murch was our kind of guru that would lead the different sessions that we had. And so I did join, and I subscribed to that for 2 years during COVID and got to know all the screenwriters. So we started when COVID lifted. One of them said, "Hey, why don't we go to the Austin Film Festival? Because that's for screenwriters. They have a conference for us." So we all met there in person. So, we've got this whole group now, and we have writers' rooms. I have had to pull back a little bit from that, but I pop in every so often and let them know what I'm doing. Um, but we actually write with each other in silence and then just chat at the end and see how you're doing, or got any problems or that we can help you with. So that created a whole new world for me during COVID. Um, and then, as I say, the documentary came back, and then it exploded, and it's
Right.
been my whole life for the last since May of, well, actually since January of 2024, when I was really working hard. I mean, all I was doing was sending out email and tons of emails.
Mhm.
I'm a very tenacious person. I think that's part of my personality.
Well, it
And
seems like you're
so,
very tenacious and you're very positive
yeah,
and you also have perseverance.
right. That's why I
But
would have been good as a patriot.
yeah. But I was asking you, you said that you wrote this summary or, about your pop star
Yeah,
experience
that's
or
once
pop
I get through
singer.
the documentary, that is my next screenplay I'm going to write.
But what are the challenges that you encountered? Because isn't it loosely based on some challenges that you had as well?
Well, yes, it will have a lot of I mean, there'll be a lot of conflict in this. So two teenage, I don't know whether I'm going to have them as sisters or as friends, school friends. But yeah, there'll be a lot of conflict in it.
But
Um,
what were some, did you have any negative experiences when you were doing pop singing?
oh yeah, yeah.
Like, can you
Well,
share some of those? Like, what are the challenges?
some of the challenges when you're teenage women, young ladies, is men.
Mhm.
And their expectations when
Mhm.
you're in show business. So yeah, so there were times. Fortunately, uh, we were together most of the time, so they had to deal with two of us, and we did kind of look out for each other to a certain degree, not always. And I was incorrigible. Obviously, I was. She had to put up with me. She loved dating, and I loved partying. So, yeah, it was a crazy time of growing up, especially when you don't have any parental controls, which we'd
Mhm.
had. We were very middle class, staunch British upbringing, and certain children meant to be seen and not heard, and stuff like that. All of a sudden, we had this total freedom and abused it, basically, So yeah, it will be kind of it will be what it was, that it was fun, and I always thought it was fun. But when I look back, especially when I started getting sober and looking at my life, and the stupid things that I did, you know, it's I'm lucky to be here because I know other people get into worse trouble than I got into, So I think that's where my positivity comes from is, hey, you've been given a second chance, make the most of it, and I have since I decided. Well, I had crashed my car in a blackout, so it was the first consequence I had, and I realized I could have killed someone. Fortunately, I crashed into a standing vehicle which was empty, and but they took me to hospital first, which was nice because they had to crowbar me, and my car was totaled, and I wasn't hurt. And so I did spend, and I thought, I am a right. I have to experience everything in life. And they put me in the lockup, but they were very lenient in those days. That was 1981. But my sister was actually, it was my sister. She was in Los Angeles. She had moved there with her husband, and she picked me up out of jail and said, "Would you go to AA?" And I thought, well, she picked me up. That's the least I can do. But then I knew when I went into my first meeting, I belonged, and that changed my whole life.
So
Changed
how
it
old were you at
completely.
that? What were you doing at that point
33.
professionally? But what were you doing professionally?
Well, as I say, I was um, trying to think. What was I doing professionally? I had
You were
got the
in.
job. I got the job at Fantasy, and I was very, because I was newly so, I'd never been a script supervisor, but I'm a quick study. And what happened was I was the assistant to the script supervisor. Then she left for a better job, and they put me in the script supervisor position. And I was there in Burbank till midnight, and running the machine to get the pink papers done and everything, the changes that were made, and I'd have to organize the audience in the studio and everything. And I was a very hard worker, but everybody was partying. I mean, they were Hollywood, and I couldn't tell them at that point that, what was happening with me. But I was a bit like, where's your copy? Where's this? I've got to put this together, and they'll be out partying themselves. So eventually they said, you're a great worker, but you're not fitting in here very well. And so I was laid off, and that was a good thing for me because that's when I when I found the job at AST Research and became their video. Again, I taught my way into it. I'd never been a producer. I just seen what a producer does. And so I just acted as if and did 18 videos for them before I said I'm going back to New York. Goodbye.
Well, what was it like to be in England after the war? The reason why I'm asking this is because I was reading Pete Townsend's memoir, and he did talk about that it affected his generation. But did you feel any effects from that?
Yeah, I was born in 1947, um, which was after 2 years after the war. And yet, when I had scarlet fever and was put into the hospital at 5 years of age, I had to have my ration card. We were still on ration cards, so I remember the ration cards. I don't, other than that, I don't really remember any hardships as such. Dad had already got his job as the building surveyor at the Bank of England, and he didn't really want to stay in England. He wanted to go to Australia. And when I was, we had our inoculations. He got a job in Adelaide, and we had a cruise ship and everything. We were ready to pack up and go. And what happened in those days, as I say, you have to give a month's notice when you're leaving a job. And what happened was we couldn't sell the house, and that was because of the war. There was a dearth of house buys. So he got frightened. I was the youngest. He had 4 kids in 5 years. So he panicked. And then his bosses said to him, you're doing a good job for us, Percy. You're welcome to say we haven't filled your position yet. So he stayed. And so I was English. Otherwise, I would have been Australian.
Right. But was there a clash between this is there I read this in this book. So was there a clash between the older generation that lived through the war or fought in the war and then the baby boomers in
Yeah,
England?
I mean, we pushed the envelope. That's what I was doing as a teenager. Was totally pushing the envelope, and parents didn't know how to deal with us. They were brought up by Edwardian rules. They were, very strict. And then as they were teenagers, later teenagers, they were at war, and some of them were getting married. Like my parents got married, what was it, in 20, when did they get married? 1940, I think they got married. They were they had got engaged, but in 1940, when he was on leave, they got married. Because I remember the wedding photo, he was in his RAF uniform. So, and then they had Anne. Anne was the oldest at 42. Then my brother came at 44. My sister Jackie, who I sang with, in 46, and me at 47. And there was only 5 years between Anne and myself, the whole four of us. So, I guess war does that. When you have the
Yeah.
chance, you do it.
Well, that's why they call
I
it
don't
baby
know.
boomer because no, they call it baby boomer throughout the world because after the war, people had
Yeah,
kids, lots of kids. So.
right, right. And and yes, we wanted to be different. We thought our parents were stodgy. We really did. And we didn't think of them as, the great generation who had fought the world to end all wars, which it didn't, but, that's what we thought at the time. But yeah, we just thought, and they were very strict with us. There was no, like I've become a very huggy person, I'm very open and huggy. There was, I don't think they ever said, love you as such. Until I taught my dad to say that when he used to come visit me here in America, Yeah, it was a different life for them. And then I think they were panicked when we were all teenagers at the same time. And it was like they lost control completely.
Yeah,
So I feel
because
sorry. I mean, I did apologize to my dad because we got very close later in life. So
but what was the atmosphere like too? Like, did people often talk about the war, or did people not talk about it? And also, did the media like was this era of
no,
like,
we
oh my
just
God,
talked about pop scene. It was the record of the day. I remember when we got our first record player, and we had Cliff Richard, Living Doll, we were just sitting round and because there was four in so small and we had a lot of rain, as you know, in England, we always had board games. So it was like, and we could never talk to our dad. Our dad worked, he came home, go into the other room, play Monopoly, play Totopoly, do what, amuse yourself. Your father wants to watch the news. So, but he was a good weekend dad. He'd take us on to the beach or places like that. Um, but yeah, there was that kind of like, you had to behave yourself. And we were pretty good. And you didn't go out to restaurants because four kids taking them. No, no, everything was done at home. Chores were very important. So
But
mum
what
mum was
about like,
sergeant major. She we called her sergeant major. She would assign us all their chores, and I
but
hated
what
she
about in the
loved.
what about in the larger culture? Like, what was it? Because you're saying that you fit more in the U.S., but I was wondering, like, the larger culture after the war were there reminders of like, this is what we fought for, this is what we went through, be a good
I
citizen? I
didn't
don't
hear
know.
it.
Okay.
Maybe the parents talked about it
Okay.
in adult conversation, but um, us kids, no, we just were kids. We go
Mm.
out where I lived before we moved down to Horsham, the terrace house we lived in. There was a field at the back and woods, and so in the summertime we'd build a hut and smoke our cigarettes out there, And then we'd also have the Olympics and we do runs. And then my brother liked cricket, so I learned to be his backstop and catch hard red leather balls for him, which was useful because when we got to Horsham, there was a cricket team there for the girls because Rodine, which is a private school down in Brighton, played cricket and they needed teams to play cricket with. So I was on the cricket team, and I was a bowler and a silly mid-on.
Now, why did you decide that you fit more in this culture than British culture back then?
Oh, that was show business when I was entertaining troops in France and Germany. And then on the QE2, I met these three guys, on the Caribbean run, and they were just mates, and I was showing because I've been to the islands and we just gelled. And they said, America would suit your personality, Jill. And in a way, I understood that because I knew I didn't stand on ceremony like my sister did. My sister was like very straight, and I was like an open book, And I think that was made me realize that, yeah, I like the atmosphere of the America. Mind you, when I came to America, I was Pollyanna, and I thought I was coming to the melting pot of the world. And I realized I wasn't in 72. And that's actually what got me into college because at first I was going to write the great American novel called The Second Revolution, which is minorities and liberals joining together to try and make an equal playing field, especially in education. I never wrote that book, but I had to go back. I thought, oh, I better learn how to type if I want to write a manuscript. So I went to secretarial school and got the bug for learning. I realized I had been bright. I was on the college track when I dropped out of school. And then that's when I went from secretarial school. I was able to transfer my credits there over to a journalism degree.
And then, but how did you adjust to this culture? Because you said it wasn't what you thought. So how did you adjust
Um,
or adjust your
well, I was in the
expectations?
right place at that time in that there, well, one of the ones I did, because when I first came here, I was a bartender and I'd never mixed cocktails before, but I learned. And that's what I did when I first came here. And Rodney was working, I think, for Pitney Bowes and doing a workshop with them, and he was staying in the hotel across the road. And he came into our bar, African American. This is an Italian American bar. And my boss said to me, Jojo Taco, he says, get rid of him. And I says, what? I said, I will not. And then after a while, everybody got used to Rodney. And then when he wasn't there, I'd say, you see, I said, you know, you like Rodney. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a good conversationalist. And he said, well, they're all right one at a time. You know, that's. But I've always even with documentaries, even at NJN, I'd always push to try and do a minority documentary, especially on education, as well as the crumbling cities of Camden and Newark. And I remember one time I wrote one. I think Coppola had just done Black and White. He'd done a series on Nightline. And they said, oh, it's been done. I said, it needs to be done more. And they wouldn't let me, you know. And so, yeah, I've always fought for the underdog. That is for sure.
And you've also like got well, I've noticed that you become more active in different film festivals, and you've actually won awards, or you almost won awards. But
I was
what's
a
the key to
second
that?
rounder, yeah, with Austin Film Festival with The Bottom Line, and also I was a second rounder with an adaptation I did, which is The Fields of Grace. And I met the author, and she actually is from Australia. I met her on Stage 32, and she was looking for a screenwriter because she's a novelist. And she mailed me her novel. I loved it, and again, it has that winds of war because it was in the mid 1930s, and it's a tragedy at the end because they go to Berlin during the Olympics, and her lover is Jewish, and he gets beaten up to the nth of his death, and he dies. You know. And I wanted to tell, there was a portion of the novel I wanted to tell. And I said to her, this is what I want to tell. I don't like the end. I don't like she said, well, that's funny because it was a short story where you're ending it. And then someone said I should make it into a novel. And so I added the other stuff on it. So she was quite happy. And I put a contract together because I'm in the WGA. I wasn't going to do it. I didn't mind doing it for nothing because it was COVID anyway. But I wanted to own the screenplay in perpetuity, whether the option stays or disappears. I can still always sell this screenplay. If the when the option expired after 4 years because he didn't sell it, and I'm busy with this, we decided just to let it go. I don't think she'll get anybody else to want to write the screenplay. So I will, once I get through this, I will then hit the road and start to sell screenplays again.
Hmm. And so, do you have any other projects going on, or are you just focusing right now on the documentary?
This is to be the documentary. I need to get it done because I have actually 10 5-minute webisodes, educational webisodes to write in January.
Hmm.
It's all part of this project.
Okay.
So this will take me through probably till we some of it will be, you know, marketing and stuff like that in the new year. We just got off a Zoom meeting with WNET, so that because they're the ones that will decide, NJPBS and WNET will decide when to air it. They think that PBS will air it first. So we're still working on that, but they have to see the documentary. So I have to get them the rough cut by the beginning of December
Hmm.
at the latest. And
And
then they will give me some feedback. And at that point, you polish it. And then you put the closed captioning on, which they do. So we work as a team at that point.
hmm. It sounds like you're really busy with this one project, which is probably why people do not necessarily work on documentaries because there are a lot of details involved and you have to raise money, et cetera. And it could take
Yeah,
like
it's
years.
it's the raising money more than anything, especially when you have the PBS model, and of course then all PBS is in a strange position at the moment. But fortunately, I think they'll still need product. So,
Yeah.
and they get it for free. But this is why you have to be a non-profit in order to raise the money. If you're doing a commercial documentary, then you're looking for sponsors, and that's a different way of raising the money. But you still basically want to have them in place before you shoot because you've got to pay your camera crew. I mean, I have camera crews. I mean, I don't do everything myself. I have camera crews, I have an editor, I have a graphics artist, I have an executive producer who is also my production consultant. So I'm paying all those people because I wanted to make sure that we were going to get the documentary done. I haven't paid myself yet, which is usually the producer's thing. But when we're fully funded, then I can pay myself,
So your
because it's in the
company, I was gonna
budget.
ask you, yeah, I was gonna ask you earlier. So your company's a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay. And
It's a
what do you,
501(c)(3). Yeah.
okay. And what kind of advice do you have for people who do want to get work on documentaries? You just mentioned all these people who are working on your documentary.
Well, they're all different skills. So being a producer is it's good to learn everything, every aspect of it. But like when it comes to graphics, I don't even want to learn that skill. I'll have a graphics artist do that. I would quite honestly like prefer to edit my own stuff because I always have. So this is new for me, is to give it to someone else and then bring it back and then tell him, no, I don't like that, change that, Whereas if I'm in my own little world, I can change it myself when I don't like something. So that's quite a new thing for me. But
But what advice do you
I
have
would
for people who
Well,
want to get the
if
work?
you're artistic and you'd like to learn graphics, then you take graphics classes, because there are so many avenues. It's not just documentaries that need graphics. And like one of the things they do is the title, the open title. That's what you need a graphics artist for, is to creatively come up with know what your theme is and come up with a great open and then bring the title up and everything. So, but you can do advertising. They need graphics. I mean, there are so many other avenues in the media that if you learn the skill, you can then choose what do you really love doing. And then editing, you can just be an editor like Steve. Well, Steve is actually a great cameraman. So he's my senior cameraman as well as editor. So, but I also hired other camera people because Steve couldn't do the whole thing. So oftentimes we had two cameras on the same shoot,
But how
just
did
to
you
be
find
able.
all these people to work for you?
Well, because I'm in the industry, these are NJN folk who've gone freelance since
Okay.
NJN closed down in 2011. I think they're all. No, I got my drone operator, Henry. He was recommended because Janice works for another production, and he does the drone for them. So she said, "Call Henry; he'll do drones for you." Because I'd never done a drone, but for the reenactments, it was nice to have a drone out there.
Hmm.
So.
And then anything else? Because I think you've answered a lot of my questions that I wanted to know, but anything else you'd
Hmm.
like to add? And you're great at talking, so this is easy.
Well, you're good at questioning. Um, I think you have to you have to have a passion for creating because it is hard work. It really is. And as a producer, you're always troubleshooting. Something will always come up that puts a spanner in the works, and then you have to undo it and make it work. So you've got to be receptive to change, you know, um, and and just be willing. If you want to be a producer, be willing to know what every aspect is and who you need to help you put your vision into reality. And for me, I love being an editor. I didn't have to be. We had editors at NJN, but for it was funny doing the segments for Discover New Jersey, they didn't have an editor for that. So that's how I had to learn how to edit. And that was when it was linear, when you had the little wheel that you turned and
Yeah,
everything.
the poster.
And then Avid came along, and once I learned how to do it, I did all my documentaries and edited them. But it was only the rough cut. Then I would go into the post production where an NJN editor would put the bells and whistles on it, the credit roll, the music, things like that.
What
So
about advice for like writing or getting to festivals or maybe possibly winning festivals?
I think with writing, just keep doing it and try to find a writers group, and they are out there. I would say, join a group like there's several groups like Stage 32 that you can meet other writers and form writers groups. Like I have a writers room. Oh, I'm not paying a subscription. This is just a whole bunch of us got to know each other in a writers room, and they said, "Hey, let's just meet on." And we actually meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. There's always something going on. The one of them does three days, Martha, and one of them does Saturday. In fact, I think it's all except for Sunday. I think it's all week now. One does a Saturday, one does a Monday, and one does a Wednesday. And then we have a Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So it's only Sunday that we don't write. And then we do pop-ups. So all of a sudden, because we will have everybody's email, so like Rebecca will get on and say, "I'm doing a pop-up from Portland, Oregon," So we all get on and join the pop-up. If we're writing and we want some company, even though it's silent company, but you get to know the people and you help one another. So
And then
it
what about
doesn't have to be a
festivals?
lonely profession.
That's true. Yeah, I think writing is very solitary, but it doesn't have to be. But what about
No.
festivals?
Festivals, they're only, I would say, don't wait, go to the good ones. Go to the ones like Austin Film Festival if you want to get your script read and learn things from the conference. That's geared to screenplay writers. Whereas like Vero Beach Film Festival is geared to filmmakers. We only accept we don't have a screenwriting. So check the ones that when you go onto Film Freeway, Coverfly has gone to bed. So Film Freeway, you can check out all of the film festivals that accept scripts. Now, a lot of them, I would say, don't even bother. There are the top 10, Nichols and top, what is it, Top Cat, Austin Film Festival, Atlanta. There's a few that are really good that are worth entering. But if you want to just get a little bit of see where it goes, there are a few what I call medium ones, which are and try to get the if you don't have a lot of money, look for when they first launch the early bird because it is cheaper that way to get your script in.
Okay, and then anything else? Because I want to make sure we captured everything.
I think we've captured everything.
Okay.
I
So I'm
just
gonna
think
stop.
you have
Yeah.
to really enjoy what you do
Yeah.
and not worry about the money.
And keep
Um,
persevering. And keep
yeah,
be open and keep persevering.
I mean, my executive producer, because I'm paying her, for her work, she said, "You got to pay yourself." I said, "No, no, no. I will pay myself once I know we have a documentary and it's airing, and I have fully funded." And I said, "I'm quite happy. I'm in a nice position where I have a free and clear over my head." Which is why I'm in Vero Beach, Florida. They were giving them away in 2012, and I have my Social Security. I have my Medicare and my overall expenses are not, is covered. So if I don't get paid, I mean, I've done so much volunteer work of raising funds for organizations down here. So for me, it's like, this is what I love doing. I like to stay busy. I love creating. And if it's not documentaries, it's going to be screenplays now. Um, and I'm a lifetime member of the WGA, so that's a good thing. I have an agent. He's hopeless, but
Yeah.
he's a lovely man, and I don't mind doing the work because I know how to do it.
Well, hopefully you will get paid because you're putting in a lot of work, but
Oh, I
let's just
will. I will.
good.
Yeah,
But
no,
also,
I already know we're almost fully funded. I'm waiting for we're I know I'm going to be paying myself in January of 2025.
okay, 26.
Something. It may not be the full amount, but I'm waiting on the New Jersey Division of Travel and Tourism for a grant from them for marketing. I'm waiting on three other. family foundations that would be very helpful. They're only small grants like 10,000, 5,000, 5,000, but that would actually fully fund me at that point,
That's
which
good.
means I pay myself as researcher, writer, because it's in the budget. Oh, that's the other thing. I did forget one thing. As the producer, you either have to get an accountant and pay them, or you know how to write a budget. And I know how to write a budget. I have this, fortunately, I have the spreadsheets that I kept from NJN, so I know what line items are, and I just make the budget. I call people that I think I'm going to be employing to say, how much will you do this for? So I have the budget. I put a price for myself. Like for a producer, you get $600 a day. Now, so when we get to the end, then I will decide with my board because I am a non-profit. Do I do it in increments or do I do it as a lump sum? So that's what I can decide with the board when the new year comes around.
Well, I feel really inspired talking to you because it just seems like, doing creative things it could be a solitary pursuit. It could be frustrating. It could be lonely, but you're making it sound like, it's possible. Like whatever you want to do is possible.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm a social person, so I can't. And yet I love when I mean I'm a day person at the moment because I have so much to do on the documentary that I have to do during the daytime. So I've changed. But normally, when I was just writing screenplays during COVID, I naturally go to night, and I loved night writing. I call them the magic hours. I love writing from like 12 to 4 in the morning. They're so quiet. It's just brilliant. So I do like downtime. I do like my own company a lot.
Nice.
But I also am a very social creature. And so it was wonderful to meet everybody in stage 32 and then retain those friendships. And we're all rooting for each other. We're just waiting for which one's going to sell the screenplay. A lot of them are winning. They're really good writers and they are winning awards. But the only when you option something you get a check.
Well,
Can
that
you really
that's
say
that's true. But that's good that you guys are rooting for each other because sometimes people become very competitive or at first they're rooting for each other. Then when somebody gets some success, the other people change.
no, no? We're a solid group. I mean, I don't know why it just happened. It won't happen with every group. I realize that, but we have a really strong, supportive group. Really
That's
strong.
good.
It's amazing. There's about
Okay, well,
40 of us in the group. They don't all show
wow.
up at the same time, but you'll get about on different days you'll get about 6 or 7 people, sometimes more. So, but because we have so many, you can pop in any time. So